Hello everyone, this is Lulu with As You Wish Pottery, and in this video we'll be painting this adorable Spoopy trick-or-treat candy bowl. As always, all of our supplies will be listed on the lesson plan, so let's get started. Okay, so to begin, we're going to start by painting the outside of the bowl with the fan brush and 1 to 2 coats of peach fuzz. To ensure that the paint glides evenly around the bowl, make sure that you start with somewhat of a wet brush, then mix the paint and the water a little bit to ensure that everything goes on smooth as you're painting it on and the coats dry evenly. Now we're going to set the bowl aside to dry, and while the bowl dries, we're going to use a pencil to trace the images on the guide onto the tissue paper. Feel free to select whichever doodles you'd like to have on the outside of the bowl, but feel free to make it your own as well. And if you want to make your own doodles, please make sure that your bowl is dry to the touch, and with a pencil you can gently sketch your doodles. Remember that the pencil and marker lines will disappear after the piece has been fired, so you don't have to worry about any mistakes you make at this point. Alrighty, so once all the designs have been sketched onto tissue paper, you're going to use a marker to retrace all the shapes and doodles around the bowl. So keep in mind though that you want to press the tissue paper onto the surface of the piece or of the pottery piece while you're tracing to ensure that the line transfers through. So with one hand you're going to hold the paper, and with the other one you're going to trace around. Remember that using cut pieces of the tissue paper will make transferring over the images a lot simpler, just because it'll be one image at a time, and it'll be easier to wrap around the bowl. I also want to remind you to make sure that you trace anything that repeats. So any of the pumpkins and stars will be repeat around the bowl, so make sure to retrace those multiple times. Then I'm going to use a pencil to draw my stars, and I'm also going to draw the little leaves that are going to go around the bowl. Keep in mind that the stars are a traceable thing, so if you wanted to use the traceable you can. I just thought it would be easier for me to just draw them on. Now we're going to use a medium round brush or a small round brush, and we're going to paint the ghost and the skull using 1 to 2 coats of polar bear. Keep in mind though that during this project you'll see that I'm going to be painting things upside down. I just find it easier when I'm doing larger items to just tip the bowl upside down and just work the other way around. It just makes it so my hand has to travel less, but if you feel comfortable doing it any other way, feel free to do it any other way. Just ensure that you're comfortable and that you're able to paint all the elements as you should be. Now I'm going to switch to a detail brush, or you can switch to a smaller brush, and we're going to paint the smaller circles inside the skull's eyes, the smaller circles inside the pumpkin's eyes, and the bat's eyes with 1 to 2 coats of polar bear. This will just make it so we don't have to do this step later. Alrighty, so for this next step, I'm going to be using the small brush, and I'm going to paint the witch's face and the stems and swirls on top of the pumpkins with 1 to 2 coats of Hinto Mint. Keep in mind though that for some reason I got out of shot on this section, so it's kind of hard to see, but just know I'm just painting the witch's face. I left a little gap of her cheek so that way I know where to paint them later, and then I'm just going to move on and paint the stems on all the pumpkins as well. Okay, so here you can see the stem and the little curlicue that I was talking about. So now I'm going to rinse off my small brush, and with it I'm going to paint the pumpkins with 1 to 2 coats of peachy keen. I would suggest that you leave the space around their eyes and inside their mouth unpainted for now, so that way we know where to paint them later. And remember, we got 2 pumpkins, so make sure to paint both. Okay, so now I'm going to use the small round brush to paint the cheeks on the witch and the ghost using the same peachy keen color. And I'm using about 1 to 2 coats at best for that. Then I'm going to switch to my detail brush, and with it I'm going to paint all the stars around the bowl using 1 to 2 coats of peachy keen. Keep in mind I like to build the shape of the star first, and then I just fill it in with 1 to 2 coats of the paint, and that's it for those. Now we're going to rinse off the detail brush, and with it we're going to paint the belt on the witch's hat, and we're going to add a few curving lines to the pumpkins with orange crush. Feel free to paint the lines over the mouth and eyes of the pumpkins to ensure that they match from top to bottom. As we will cover the mouth and the eyes later, this is just going to help us ensure that all the lines match one another. Now I'm going to use the same brush to paint all the leaves around the bowl with 1 to 2 coats of orange crush. I just want to say here that you can add the leaves wherever the space allows, and if there's no space, then don't worry about painting them. Now I'm going to give the outside of the bowl a few minutes to dry, and I'm going to move on to painting the inside of the bowl. Using the large square brush, I'm going to paint the lower half of the bowl with 1 to 2 coats of peachy keen. Then I'm going to use the same brush and paint the top half of the bowl using 1 to 2 coats of orange crush. Let the colors touch in the middle so they blend naturally. At this point, I'm also using the tip of my brush to paint the rim to ensure that it's all nice and clean. So take your time with this and just kind of rotate your bowl as you're going along. Now let's start painting some of the larger elements around the bowl. We're going to be using the detail brush and black lab, and I'm going to paint the bats with this. I'm also going to make sure that I'm avoiding the eyes that I created. Remember, I'm just going to outline them and then fill in the space around them with 1 to 2 coats of black lab. So I'm painting the bats with this. I'm also doing all the eyes inside all the pumpkins, the eyes on the witch. I'm also doing mouths on the pumpkins and things like that. So anything that requires a large amount of black, we're going to work on next. So for this point, I'm just going to let this roll so you can see me painting, but feel free to fill in all those larger things first, and then we can work on outlining and things like that later. Remember that things like the pumpkins and the skull, they have already white inside their eyes, so just make sure to avoid that section. So paint around it, create kind of a circle. This just adds that highlight to the eyes without us having to do much since we already painted it earlier on. Okay, so after all the larger shapes are painted, now we're going to begin outlining using the same brush and 1 to 2 coats of black lab. I would highly suggest that you start with all the larger things or whatever seems the driest, then move to smaller elements like the stars and the leaves. So try to work all the larger items first. Also work however you feel the most comfortable. Remember, I like to flip things upside down whenever I need a little bit more access, so a little bit more reach with my hand. This makes it so my hand doesn't have to travel as far. So just know that that's how I outline pretty much anything that's on larger items and things like that. I'm also kind of doing just one section at a time. So I'm working one side of the bowl first, then I'm doing everything in that section and then moving on. But you are more than welcome to do it however you feel the most comfortable. So if you want to do all the larger things first, feel free to do that. I think that that's one of the easiest ways to go about this. But for me, I'm just going to continue outlining. Remember that I start off with thinner lines when I'm doing any type of detailing work, just because you can thicken up your lines as you're going, but it's always best to start off with something thin and then thicken up as you go. Note that there are some little accents and things like that around the bowl that you're more than welcome to play around with. If you see here, I did the witch's hat and then I added her hair and things like that. So yeah, so just take your time with this portion. Remember, the detailing and outlining is one of the most time consuming. So do anything that you feel the most comfortable doing, and you can also skip a lot of things if you don't feel comfortable outlining them. There's a lot of color in here, so everything will look really, really good once everything's fired, however you decide to go about it. Here's a little close-up of everything we've done so far. Now we're going to add some last details outside of the bowl, and for this step you can use the Q-tips or the back of a pencil, and with Black Lab we're going to add dots around the outside of the bowl wherever the space allows, so feel free to add them however you like. Once we're done, we're going to switch to the back of a small or medium brush, and we're going to paint smaller black dots around the shapes. Also add any accents or anything like that that you wanted to do in the eyes or anything like that. Then we're going to rinse off the back of that brush, and with it we're going to add the final eye accent dots to the witch and the ghost with Polar Bear. Now for the last step, we're going to use a small fan brush, a toothbrush, or a round brush to splatter the inside of the bowl with Black Lab. Alrighty, so here's a little sneak peek of the bowl before it's fired. As you see, all the things look so cute and adorable, but once the piece is fired, everything brightens up and the bowl is ready for any candy that you want to put in there. So thank you so much for painting with me today. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you guys again later. Bye bye.